If everybody could make their way to a seat, we are going to begin in about a minute, and that will put us at 6:05. We're 5 minutes behind, but I figured we would be, and so make your way to a seat. Then we're going to have our blessing, and then we're going to start today's program. There are more soups. If you want seconds, you are more than welcome to go back and get that. Just want to remind you of that as well. Also, we did not announce this, but this program is Facebook Lived, whatever that means, and we're showing it on Facebook, the church's Facebook page. And so if you know somebody that couldn't make it, if you want to tell them to get on Facebook and look at the church's Facebook page, they can watch tonight's program. It'll also be on the church Facebook page for about a week or two. So if you know somebody that might be interested in watching some of this, you're more than welcome to do that, and it'll be available. Well, good evening, everybody. I hope everyone has had a good day, and I hope you're ready to, we're going to laugh a little bit. We're going to think about some of our local history. I've tried to put together a program tonight of things that you may or may not know. Some of you know a whole lot more than I do. Some of you don't know anything, and some of you will learn something tonight, and some of you maybe can teach me something tomorrow and correct me when I mess it up. But don't do it tonight during the program. So can everybody hear okay? Can everyone hear? Can everybody hear in the back? Are we all good? All right, I've got a couple of dad jokes for you to start the evening, but let's start with prayer, okay? So let's pray together. Gracious God, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to just fellowship together. We got a lot of different folks here and new people in our community and to our church and to our whole area. And we pray, gracious God, and we say thank you for our past. We say thank you for our present nature. And Lord, as all of our churches in this area respond, thank you, Lord, for what is to come. And so, Lord, bless our evening, bless our food, bless those that lovingly prepared it today for us. And I just thank you for all those that make our historical part of this community possible. And we give all this in your glory. In Christ's name, amen. Tracy asked me to pick up 6 cans of Sprite at Quality Foods. When I got home, I realized that I had picked 7 up. When your wife says she will be home in 5 minutes, she will be. You don't have to keep reminding her every 15 minutes. It takes guts to be an organ donor. Do not touch. This must be a horrible thing to read in Braille. What do you call a knight who is afraid to fight? Surrender. What does a janitor say when he jumps out of the closet? Supplies! I stayed up all night to see where the sun was. Then it dawned on me. If a person weighs 99 pounds and that 99-pound person eats 1 pound of nachos, Are they 1% nachos? Thank y'all for being with us tonight, and I just thought I'd share those things, and they've probably already they've changed your life. I had 20 of those, and my daughter Ashton said, "Dear Lord, Dad, cut it down to 4. What does she know? All right, let me say this at first. I do not know all or much, but I just want to share some. When you do a history presentation, you always take the risk, because some of the people, like Sylvine Fleming back there, she was living during the Civil War. And so Sylvine understands what it was like, and so she remembers things pretty crisply. You'll see some things that she has given me in here. And so just remember that you just take a risk with that. So we're going to start in a general way and then talk about some specifics. And my goal is to be through around 7, and then we will dismiss some of you to go into the church and look at some of the church stuff. If you have not been into our church, this is really one of the most historical buildings in Hartwell. And then also we've got the bus running. If you don't want to walk over to the museum, we have our bus. If you go down the elevator and go back out the garden entrance there, and you can get on the bus and go over, or you can just walk over to the museum, and then we'll have ice cream over there. We're going to get somebody to take the ice cream over there in a little bit, and so that it will still be, so it'll be a little softer when we get ready to go into that. All right, so I want to start out with Hart County, and you're not going to be able to see some of these things very well. I did the best I could do. This is a map of Hart County. It's an early map, and so it is all incorrect. The Savannah River is not right on how it flows, but the little box is around the area that became Hart County. It was created by an act of the legislature December 7th, 1853. It was laid out in 1854, and it was taken from Franklin and Elbert counties. Lake Hartwell, of course, is a man-made lake with over 600 miles of shoreline. It was created by an act of Congress, the Flood Control Act of May 1950, and it was built between February 61 and March of 63. Now, I want to show you this man. He looked kind of scary. His name is Howell Cobb. Walter Gordon knew him. They were friends. And I want to tell you a little story about Hartwell proper. And it's very important because this is the man that Howell Street is named for. Now, it began like this, and this is a map, an older map of Hartwell. If you notice, if you can't see it very well, but it's incorrect because it shows the railroad going straight through town and heading into South Carolina. And as we know, it doesn't do that. And we're not going to do anything about railroad history at the Methodist Church tonight. All right, so some wanted the town of Hartwell to be located at center of the world. You know where the center of the world is? It's right outside Fabritex, and it's on Highway 29. That was an important place for the Cherokee. It was the gathering place where they gathered to sell items, to barter, also for counsel. It was a place where carrier pigeons, would you say lighted? I don't know how to say that. Ms. Abbott, my 8th grade English teacher, just had a stroke. And she's been dead a really long time. And so it was so, there would be so many carrier pigeons there that they would land in the trees at that area and they would break the limbs. And so that's where, of course, they started shooting the carrier pigeons until now they are extinct. Well, the center of the world was an important place. There was a group that wanted to locate the city of Hartwell around the center of the world because it was a natural place for that. And then that group hired a lawyer because it went to court because they couldn't decide it. They hired Thomas R. Cobb to represent them. This was Howell Cobb's brother. Howell Cobb is the older brother. Thomas is the younger brother. He was a lawyer, author, politician, and he was also a Confederate officer, and he was killed in the Battle of Fredericksburg. That is Thomas R. Cobb. Howell Cobb, on the other hand, the older brother, he was a 5-term member of the U.S. House of Representatives. He was the House Speaker. And then in between House Speaker, then he served the Hartwell people here, and he represented the group that wanted to place the city of Hartwell exactly where it is right now. Now, before Hartwell was here, This was a hunting area for a family and members of that family, and there was a large rock on Benson Street that actually looked like a chair. And people would hunt there, sit there, wait for game to cross by, and it was a very popular spot for people to hunt. Of course, that rock was blasted away years and years and years ago, right around the time Miss Nancy here was born. And so all that's underneath, all the buildings and all of our roading. All right, so Howell Cobb represented the group that obviously what? They won. And they wanted to name the main thoroughfare, the main street, in honor at the time of Howell Cobb. But the problem is they couldn't name it Cobb Street because they knew that later generations would struggle, because who did they name it for? Thomas or Howell? And they definitely hated Thomas. They couldn't stand him. They just couldn't have anything to do with him. So that's why the main thoroughfare in Hartwell, Georgia is named Howell Street. It's named after Howell Cobb, the older brother. He was paid a total, and this is pretty much how much Walter charges today. He was paid a total of $428 to represent the case. And just for tonight, if any of you need a lawyer, Walter said he would just ask for $428,000. May of 1854, the judges of the inferior court of the county council purchased for $200 100 acres of land, which was located right where we are. Lot number 1 of 139 was where the courthouse is today. And so all of that became Hartwell. The heirs of that family that sold that land, the heirs were members of James Vickery family. He laid off the streets and the squares and the lots. Then the city of Hartwell was incorporated into a town in February of 1856, and it became a city in 1904. As I said, the town was divided into 139 lots, number 1 being the courthouse and number 17 being the Methodist Church. But it's not where we sit today. It was across the street. For some reason, they built a structure over there at that time. It was very simple. And for some reason, they didn't like it, and they negotiated with the city to move here, where we are, and they built a church here. Number 94 was for the Presbyterian Church. Number 112 was for First Baptist. They wanted to give the churches the deeds, but the Methodist Church had a board of trustees, and the Baptists did not yet have a deacon board. And so they couldn't give that to the Baptists at that time. Hartwell's main street, as I said, was named Howell Street in honor of the lawyer who won the litigation. The widths of the street were modeled after the town of Madison, Georgia. People on the community stayed in Madison the night before the town was laid out. They loved it. They went around town and measured streets, and they were such wide thoroughfares that they decided to do the same thing, and they put the same widths on the streets in the city of Hartwell. And so now we have all of that around us for our beautiful city in Hartwell. Now, Hartwell and Hart County, and if you're from here, you call it Hartwell. It can be one syllable. And now, it's just like other places when you're from there. If you're from a town called Camac, Georgia, you call it Camac. If you're not from there, you call it Camac, and you're ignorant. And so, but Hartwell is Hartwell, and it's Hart County. And so we live in Hartwell. And you know, when people are not from here, they call it Hartwell, right? And so when you first move here, you call it Hartwell. And then you get to stay here. It takes about 5 years for you to get for you to shed your Atlanta-ness. You know what I mean? Somebody say, thank you, Jesus. Yeah. If you've lived here forever, you always call it Hartwell. All right, Nancy Hart. This was the only county in the state of Georgia named for a female. When the Nancy Hart Highway during the 20s, it was the only highway in the United States named for a female. Now, I mean, as far as a U.S. highway, it was the Nancy Hart Byway or Highway. Now, Nancy Morgan is believed to have been born in Yadkin River Valley of North Carolina in 1735. She married Benjamin Hart and moved with her husband to northern Georgia, and they had a family of 6 sons and 2 daughters. Nancy Hart never lived in Hart County. The county was only named for her. She lived in Wilkes County, which later became Elbert County. And so you can go now to Elberton, and I mean, why would you want to do that? But you can go to Elberton and see a replica cabin that is actually made with stones that came from her original cabin in the chimney. That's why the beautiful monument that we have on Old 29 looks like a chimney. It is representative of the chimney that was on Nancy Hart's cabin. Remember in the 60s, you used to get a little bread making kit, and they called it Nancy Hart's Cabin, and it came with little pans, and you could make like a little gingerbread house that was called Nancy Hart's Cabin. Do y'all remember those? I've seen them on eBay, and so it's just best we not have that. There are many exploits about Nancy Hart, and most of the stories probably are true to some degree or another. The main story is about her encounter with some Tories. They were British troops that were fighting they were in the Revolutionary War. And so the story goes that they shot one of her turkeys out in her yard. And Nancy was a strong, powerful woman. The Cherokee called her War Woman. And they didn't mess with her. And she also taught, and she did other things in the community. And it's a great bunch of stories about her. But they shot the turkey. They were going to force Nancy to cook the turkey for them. And they started getting comfortable while they were sitting around. They laid their guns beside the wall in her cabin. Her cabin was not very big, and there were probably holes in the cabin, just because cabins in that era probably had some holes in the walls. And over the course of time, she started passing out her homemade liquor that she had, and, like many of you do. And so they got really comfortable. And so she got her daughter on the other side of the hole in the wall, and she started passing their guns out the hole in the wall. And then she also sent her daughter to go get some other people and her husband. They finally got there, and after some time, she had passed all of their muskets outside. And when they started looking for them and realizing something was up, the men burst into the room. Well, Nancy had a gun, and one of the guys reached for a gun, and when he did that, she shot him dead. I mean, there's like dead, and then there's dead. And he was dead. Now, rumors have it she shot two. We don't know that for certain. We don't know for sure. But rumors say, other stories say she shot two, but we know particularly probably she shot one. Well, and then, so there's the men burst in, they captured them, they tied them up, and the men said, these guys are traitors because they're Tories, they need to be shot. What did Nancy say? Do you remember the story, some of you? It was too good for them, says Sarah, who is the embodiment of Nancy Hart today. Her spirit visits her. And so she said, that's too good for them. They need to be hanged. And so they were hanged. And so they were buried all together in the ground. About 150 years later, while putting up the Elberton-Toccoa Airline Railway through the area, a shallow grave, this was in the 20s, of about 3 feet deep, was uncovered containing 6 sets of bones that they believed were the remains of the Tories in Nancy Hart's cabin. And so we believe that story is true. And so it's a very interesting story. Hart County was named for her. She did other exploits and many, many other discussions and things, and she was a church-going person. Then she eventually had to move to Brunswick. Her husband died. Then they moved from there up to Kentucky. This is her gravestone. There have been talk all along about trying to get her grave moved here. That's never going to happen. It's in a family plot in Kentucky. But there is a group that's starting now, and this is very interesting. This just started. They're applying for grants for a beautiful bronze statue of Nancy to be made, to be commissioned, to place here in Hartwell. And I love that idea. I love that. And so I'm excited about those possibilities. And where that is located, I don't know where that's going to be. It's going to be somewhere here in town or the museum, but I'm excited about that possibility. There's a plaque at the Nancy Hart Cabin in Elberton that locates the mention of her overcoming the Tories and also of a good friend of hers they killed a friend of hers that lived near her, Colonel John Dooley. John was one of the 3 military commanders who led the fight at the Battle of Kettle Creek. This is the cabin, and like I said, it has the hearth made from the original stones from her house. After she lived in Brunswick, she wanted to come back to her cabin, what was then Elbert County, and the river had flooded, and so it was not even feasible for her to live there. So she went back to live with her son, and then she and her son and their family moved to Kentucky. The Battle of Kettle Creek took place in Washington, Georgia. He just lived very near there, and the Tories that shot him could very well have likely been the same group of persons that came to Nancy's cabin and that saw their demise. It's also speculated that these Tories showed up at her house and that went later to kill Job Bowers in 1779. He was an officer in the American forces. He came home because his wife had just had a baby, and when he was home, he was killed. This incident happened when he came home on leave from fighting the Tories and to see his brand new son named William. And Nancy Hart continued to live in her cabin settlement for several years after the Revolution. 1790 is when she moved, and then it was named Elbert County. And then the 1790s, the Harts moved to Brunswick, and then, as I said, ended up in Kentucky. So that's pretty cool stuff about Nancy Hart. Again, this is kind of her stats, and that's her headstone. Now, I want to tell you about Joe Bowers just a second. He was born in Virginia in 1755, and he was of Welsh ancestry. He moved to Wilkes County, which is now, of course, our county, which is Hart County. And in this community, he lived in what is called Gold Mine. Do any of y'all live in Gold Mine community? Y'all live out there? Well, we'll tell you why it's called Gold Mine in a little bit. But the Revolutionary War broke out. He joined the local militia, and while serving in the war in 1779 is when he was killed at his home. He found his baby boy William at just a few days old, and while he was home, a band of roving Tories came and shot him. He was only 24 years old at the time. And what could have happened is Nancy and all of the Tory event that took place in her cabin could have been somehow involved with those 2 killings that I mentioned with you. And a lot of historians speculate that that could have been the reason behind it. All right, let's talk about courthouses now. The first courthouse built in Hart County was completed in May of 1854, and it cost a total, you could hire Walter for less than this. It cost $499. That's it, the first courthouse. It was not substantial. It was a small wooden building and was torn down. The second courthouse, this is a group of men standing in front of the second courthouse. You can see, can you read the year on there? I can't from here. 56, they think. That could have been a jury. They don't know for sure what that was, but that's pretty cool. And that's a pretty cool picture because you see how elaborate and really pretty that courthouse was. This was the second courthouse. It was dedicated in February of 1856, and it cost $5,500. So they went from $499 to $5,500. Taxes must have gone up. This structure, as everything else from olden days in Hart County and in all of our area around us, was destroyed by fire on Christmas Eve of 1900. This courthouse was destroyed Christmas Eve of 1900. And so then, of course, this next courthouse was built. And here's an unbelievable thing. This is a picture of that courthouse, and there was a tornado that year of 1893, and it tore half the roof off the courthouse. So you see the roof is torn off. And if you look to the left, you'll see the portico. Look, see, this is a picture of it frontwards, and it's a horrible picture. But that's a picture of it sideways in 1893. So this courthouse was much more substantial. This courthouse, and then they built in 1902 this courthouse. And this is the courthouse that everybody remembers fondly here in Hartwell. It was a beautiful structure, had a clock in the tower, had a statue of Nancy Hart on top of it. and all of that has been destroyed. Now, some people say in the county that the clockwork still exists somewhere. So they probably didn't burn, but there's some people in this room that remember somebody was out on a date the night it burned. It burned in February of 1967. You were around here too? You didn't set it, did you? You watched it burn? Walter saw the columns fall. He was out on a date and he saw some fire there and just the craziness of it all. And so then we've got pictures of every corner of this courthouse. This is when that monument was dedicated here. Look at that, all those people gathered around the courthouse. It was raining, obviously. And then this is our current courthouse. It was built in 1971. It's what we got, and y'all fuss about taxes all the time, so don't give me your booze. Raise your taxes, then we can do something different. But no, don't give me your booze. Yeah, whatever. It serves us well. So this is our current courthouse since 71. Now, many of y'all family members that lived here for a long time, y'all know what this is. This is the county jail. We had 4 jails in Hart County. A lot of this came from Sarah LeSueur's articles that she puts in the Hartwell Sun booklets. And so I've really enjoyed reading all of those. And this one was entitled Nancy Hart Visits the Jail. And that just has a lot of connotations with it. But anyway, Hart County's had 4 jails. The first one built in 1855. It was on lot number 6. It was destroyed by what? Fire. Okay. And then 1860 something. Second on lot 6, wooden. It was finally demolished. The third on lot number 2. It was destroyed by fire that was set by 2 of the inmates. They shouldn't have been smoking in their cell. It was pretty substantial. It had wooden walls and had blocks and brick in the middle and had another wooden wall. They set it on fire and almost were killed in the fire themselves. And then the 4th jail, they moved the lot again. They sold the other lots. They moved the jail to lot number 89. This is the one we had, Romanesque style. When it was built, it was the grandest jail at the time in 1893. So this jail was built in 1893, and it was grand, and it was magnificent. And so it was counted as the best jail in the whole state of Georgia. It was modern, had all the modern features, had 3 stories, had a basement, had a tower. I don't know about y'all, but I think every jail needs a tower. And so it's a beautiful building if you take away the additions. It could be such a neat space, 1893. All right, so we're going to walk down History Lane. This is in the 30s. This is an aerial view. You see the courthouse there. I wanted to show you this. This is a modern picture of the same angle that was done for me by one of our guys that has a drone. And so we go back here, look, there's the courthouse in the middle, you see the square, and there's the courthouse in the middle, and you see all the things around it. The church is in the far right corner, you can't see it very well. The first, these are pictures of Hartwell from different angles, and different eras and different times. That's a beautiful sunset over our beautiful city. Different views, that's looking towards the McDonald's and looking back towards the city. The church is on the far right. Interesting pictures. This is Depot Street. The church is almost in the center of this picture. And you can see all the stuff going on Depot Street. And you see the train cars all around. And the train was very active at this time. It hadn't been active since 1983. Then you've got other pictures of downtown. And you can see the Carter Law Building. And you see the beautiful house straight across that's still there, but they bricked the front since then. The whole thing was wooden, and you can see how neat that space is. And the Carter Law Building there. The Carter Law Building was lots of things. It was a bank. It was the Hartwell Bank at one time. It became a drugstore, and that's the Carter Law Building. Different views of town, and I've got most of these pictures over here on this table so you can see them a little closer. Now, it's hard to see this, but I want you to note that building there on the corner. That was the building that was backtracks. And if you notice, it has a huge tower in the middle. And it was a beautiful structure. It's been all kinds of things. It was a livery stable. it was an automobile showroom. Walter remembers as a kid when they would put paper on the windows, and then they would roll the cars in for the new model years, and then they'd rip the paper off in the 50s, and how cool that was. Can you imagine a car show, a car dealership being in that building right there? The Ford dealership was right over here. I'm going to show you the REO dealership in just a second. But I want to show you what this building, if from the same angle, that's it now. And see, all of that was one. It was also the Coca-Cola bottling plant as well. There were apartments upstairs. It was the Green Bean Coffee House when we first moved here. It's been a little bit of everything. It's been, it was a restaurant not that long ago. But look at that again. Can you see how beautiful that building was? And then they took the tower off at some point, and then they sold it in different sections. Now, you're about to flip, because I found the Georgia Archives, the Georgia Vault is an amazing place to find pictures. And this is outside that building when it was a livery stable. And if you notice, it says to the right is City Hall. And this was 1909. And isn't that amazing? And I thought at first it wasn't that building, but I put pictures. I spent way too much time on this. And so I just thought it was really cool how it is that building and how different it is today, but amazing that we can walk down such history in our community. Now, Sylvine remembers that. She remembers that as a child, you know. So then that's looking across there. There's former Bell's Cobb to the right. These are city scenes. There's 1910. I think I see Sylvine in that picture. She was shopping. Another city scene in the 20s. Here we go again. That one's probably in the 10s again. That picture's actually on the table, and it's in color. I tried to do all the pictures in black and white so you could compare apples to apples. Look at Depot Street. That's when the cotton came in. And look at all those wagons of cotton. Nancy, you and Bob remember that, don't you? Unbelievable. All right, I have to talk about John R.K. just for a second. We still have part of his family still members of our church. He was a founding member of the Hartwell community in Hartwell. And in fact, this front window on Howell Street in the sanctuary was donated by the city of Hartwell to this church in his memory, because he died in 1897, as you notice, and he died before this building was completely finished, but he helped build this building. In fact, we have a slide, a piece of his masonry work that he used in the building of this sanctuary in 1897. He was involved in building many things in this community and was just phenomenal. And so he was just involved in everything. And that is the first church, and he built that church, and it was built in 1860, and it sat where the current sanctuary sits today, and that's a picture of that church. That church was actually torn down when they decided to build this building, which, by the way, cost $10,000 when they built it. And they pulled it down with mules, and the frame of the building was sold and taken to be used as a barn for someone in the community. And that tells me a lot of things. It tells me that they were planning for the future. It tells me that they were willing to do whatever it took to plan for the future. And that is a neat structure, but it was not adequate for what needed to be done. And John R.K. he built this, and in his later years, this got built, and the city gave that window in his memory. Benson is the window on Webb Street, and it was donated by his family in his memory. Now, this is our church, and it's what is that, 19, what does that say? Yeah. And that's a neat picture. You notice the house behind it. That was all part of the Mill Village. This was, there was another church down Webb Street, and it was called Candler Cathedral or Candler Chapel. Some of our members that lived in the Mill community remembered when it burned. And it was the church for the Mill Village, and the Methodist church here was the church for those that were in the upper echelons of mill employment. And so Asa Candler Jr., we're going to talk about that in just a second, but he attended church here. Candler, who was the owner and founder of Coca-Cola. We'll talk about that in a second. This is Easter Sunday, 1904. This picture is in our history room in there. Hope you'll wander around a little bit. We have some original things. This pulpit here probably came from the 1860 church. Now, I don't think it's 1860, but it's old. Then when we built this new building in 1897, the new pulpit was installed. But we kept the old table and the old pulpit. And so the old table is in the back of the sanctuary, and this is the pulpit. And I believe, and that doesn't make any difference about anything, but I believe that these are part of that original church. And so we still use these today, of course. We also have the communion set from 1897. I dated them. We also shined them up, and there's a communion, and there was a common cup, and there was a thing to put it in. I don't want to take long of this. There's a window in our sanctuary that faces Webb Street that nobody ever sees because the ceiling was built, and you never see it. It's never seen. An interesting fact about it, that they spent that much money in 1897 to put in stained glass for a stained glass window that nobody in the church would ever see. That speaks volumes to me about people that look towards the future. And when we built this building, this was our theme, and it was windows of opportunity. And this is a picture of that stained glass window with the sun shining through it. And you're seeing it for the first time, and really never seen since 1897. But because right now we've got a air conditioner unit so close to it, you really can't get behind it. But I made Drew, Christy's son, Drew Zamatis, go up in the stinky bat-filled attic, and I made him take these pictures. And so I've got a picture of him doing it, but it would have been child abuse at the time. It was so hot. I was holding the ladder, and I thought I was going to die, so I just went down and sat in the air conditioning. This is a picture of that window, and that's a composite of that window that's up in the attic, never, ever, ever seen by anybody. There's First Baptist, beautiful church that was on the corner. It was torn down. It speaks well. And then here's their beautiful new church there across the street at First Baptist. And so these churches have always been in communion with each other and working together for this community. And that has always been and always will be. Now, I want to talk a little bit about schools. This was the first high school. That's the second high school. It went up in 1907, January 24th. And so then they built this. And that is gorgeous. Guess what happened to it? Yeah. I think they actually tore that one down, didn't they, Nancy? Because that sits where Hartwell Elementary sits today. And then they built Hartwell Elementary. And so, Christmas Eve, it did burn. That's Hartwell Elementary. It was built in the 40s. Still used today. It's been totally redone. And thank goodness. It is a beautiful, if you ever get a chance, go over and walk through the school because they have made it beautiful again. Preserved the floors, preserved all of those things. Many of the people that lived in Hartwell went to school there. Did any of y'all go to school there? Look at that. So they went to Hartwell Elementary. And so, huh? Did you really? Oh. That was the school complex. That was the old gym. Gym is still there. It's used by Hartwell Elementary today. Gym has been redone, and you can see that. This is an aerial view. You see the school there in the middle of how the complex looked before we built. And this is our new high school, which anybody that gets a chance to tour it realizes that it is one of the most preeminent schools in our state. And it does things that no other school does in the state of Georgia. And we are so blessed to have the school we have. I just wanted to remind you there is a display over at the museum of the Hartwell Training School, which was used for our African American members of our family in our Hartwell community. We need to do more with this, and there's a whole display over at the museum that I hope you'll get a chance to see tonight. And it talks a little bit more. James Brown played at a prom here. His band played here. I feel good. All right, let's talk about Hartwell Mill. 1894. It's very interesting because the Hartwell Mill, it was started here. It was begun here in 1894. And this is what the mill originally looked like. You can look at some of those older pictures and you note that it looked like mills in every other city where you see old mills. Now, Coca-Cola came to town because Witham Mill was not making any money. But he was a friend of Asa Candler Sr., and so Asa Candler Sr. invested and became the controlling investment in the mill in Witham Cotton Mill. It no longer stands, of course. Our parking lot and our gym sits on the foundation of it. The mill village was built around the mill in this community. Asa Candler Jr. had been in boarding schools and just was partying life to all degrees in California. I know none of you can relate to that, but his dad said, it's time for you to come and get fixed. And so he sent him to Hartwell. And so he became a part of this community. He moved from Los Angeles, California to Hartwell, Georgia in the fall of 1900. And there's a lot of similarities between Hartwell, Georgia and Los Angeles, California. By May of 1901, he was engaged, and in July, he was married. Guess where he met a girl? In our church. He met a girl in our church. It was wonderful. Her name was Helen McGee. Her father was the editor of the Hartwell Sun. She sang in that very choir in that room in there. They fell in love. He fell for her hard. I've got copies of all the letters he wrote to his sister. He never talked about Helen until it was time to get married. And he informed the family within 2 months. They said, can you hold it off another month? All the Candlers came up here to Hartwell, and not a single member of Helen's family participated in the wedding because her dad was a very religious man and he didn't like Asa Candler Jr. But Asa Candler Jr., they called him Buddy. They didn't like Buddy. Buddy was kind of a fly-by-the-seat kind of guy. He'd had trouble everywhere. He's going to have trouble again. But he did okay here in Hartwell, even though the mill never made him much money. And so they got married. He'd go back and forth to Atlanta. Well, it's hard enough today to go back and forth to Atlanta. But back then, there were only 2 trains a day that came to the Hartwell station. You had to go from here to Bowersville. You had to get on a train that either went to Athens or to Elberton. And when you got to Athens or Elberton, then you had to go get on a train that went to Atlanta. It was an all-day affair, similar to the way it is today. So, well, old buddy, they went back and forth. They had 1 child, and his dad said, you can't be without a house. And so they bought the Candler-Linder house. And so Asa Candler brought it in 1901 for the little family to have. He was very lonely up here. And so then they had 1 child, then they had another child. But Helen was sickly. She could sing. She had a beautiful voice, but she was sickly. And so they called the family to come down to Atlanta, and they did. But Buddy had to come back up to Hartwell to take care of business. So he got back up here in Hartwell. They'd had a premature baby, their 2nd child. And he got stuck here because he got stuck in a snowstorm and couldn't get back to Atlanta for about 3 to 4 weeks. And in that time, unbeknownst to him, his child died. And so then when he finally got back to Atlanta, it just realized that he was just heartbroken with all of the things that were going on. Eventually, his dad sold the interest, and they sold the house, and they sold everything, went back to Atlanta. Helen and Buddy moved back to Atlanta, and they lived the rest of their lives in Atlanta. She eventually died in the 20s because she was a very, very sickly lady. And so now, unfortunately, this house, this is what it looked like right before it was torn down. The Linders, it was sold to the Linders. The Linders were the telecommunications folks here and created Hart Cable and Hart Telecommunications. a very forward-thinking family in our community, and we're very grateful for them as well. But unfortunately, their original house was not survived. This was 1953. These were some of the machines that were found in the mill when it was operational. It came back to be known as the Hartwell Mills. Then it was sold several times before we ended up with the opportunity to make it part of our complex here. So that's a little story about Coca-Cola in Atlanta. Now we got to talk about, oh my goodness. Now we got to talk about Brown's Mill. This is, let me show you where this is. Can you see it on the map? It's called Middle o' the Lake. It was Brown's Ferry. Very interesting place. It was Brown's Ferry. This is an early picture of the ferry, and it was the #1 crossing into Anderson, South Carolina. It had been known earlier by another name, and it was here. Several things happened. There were a couple of murders here. If we have time, we're going to talk about the murders. But this was an important place because this is where they built the bridge, and this is where Alfred Still Bridge was built. This was a toll bridge that was built by the Alfred community and family, and they built this bridge to cross, and it was the best place to cross for miles and miles and miles and miles. And so then this was replaced with this bridge, and then of course, then everything happened. Things changed. Lakes are built. Then this was the Lewis Bridge, and then it was moved. You can see where those spots are. The line up at the top is where the dam is, and the 2 dots are where the bridge is today. This is what the river looked like before the dam was built. Look at all that bottom land. That's where all the cotton in Hart County and all of the crops grew. Just unbelievable dirt. And then they started building the dam in 1958. There's some of the folks. Kathy Fender's dad, I think, is in that picture. I believe that's right, Kathy. And then we've got a little more of the dam here as it comes together. And then here's the South Carolina side. That's where we walk, and our dogs go to the bathroom. And then that's it today. And that the Lewis Bridge was moved to this place, and now it was renamed. And our beautiful dam, and there you go again. You see where the dam is, and the little dots are where the bridge is today. So you can kind of see a before and after. And that's the other side. Isn't that beautiful? And so very, very grateful for Reed for doing that. I wanted to take a few moments and talk about Mount Zion School and Church, because this church and school, where it is now under the lake. All of the graves from Mount Zion Cemetery were removed. They were dug back up. They had ground-penetrating radar. Wherever there was a disturbance, they took a scoop of dirt, and then they placed that at New Harmony Methodist Church. And so if you go out to New Harmony, they're numbers, not even names on a lot of the graves, where they dug and placed that dirt where there was disturbance. Of course, they missed some graves. When the lake was way down several years ago, you can still see those scoops in that cemetery. Some of our people took pictures of that. It's kind of weird. And so this was the school. Remember, there were many schools. I don't have time to talk about all the different schools. We've got more history of them at the museum. This was the Mount Zion School. This is where Sylvine went to school. And that's true. That's right. I mean, I'm not making that up. She did go to school here until they consolidated. Now, the neat thing is these are pictures of Sylvine, and it's really hard to see. Because I've got a lot of questions to ask about one of these pictures in particular, and we'll do that at another time because I might be embarrassed with the answer. But that's Mount Zion Church right there at the bottom left. And this column in the corner is a column from that church. We didn't know they existed. I found a family in town that has all 4. And so we will somehow use them in the museum and also use them somewhere around in historical places. That is a column. The rest of that building was torn down and is under the water. But those are the columns. They're beautiful. You need to look at them before you leave. They're a solid piece of wood, and they're turned. They're heavy. And they were a part of the Mount Zion Church. And so it's in the corner there, and it's a gorgeous piece of wood. The family does not want them to go to anybody's house. People have offered thousands upon thousands of dollars for those columns. The family also had 4 stained glass windows from that church, but they've been lost to history. And so that would have been cool. This is Enoch. This is one of Sylvain's brothers, and this is when they won the 32 basketball championship. And I just thought that was so cute. Remind us the school there at Mount Zion and how they all played basketball together. What did you call it, Sylvain? You said there was you called it a funny name for the varsity and the junior varsity. And so and there was one girls' team, and this was the boys' team that won in the winter of that year. Here's, of course, Smith-Mcgee Bridge. It was built in the 20s. It was a beautiful bridge in its own site. It's very narrow, though, if you notice when you see the old one today. Again, these are different views of that old bridge. It's been replaced, of course, and the road has been straightened out. The REO company here in Hartwell, this is where Walter Gordon's office is today. Same building. They sold cars, but they were not very successful. But the number one success they had was selling what? Do you know? Fire trucks. And that in front is an REO Speedwagon. And the group is named after this fire truck, REO Speedwagon. And it's a riot. And that is in front of Walter's office. Walter is a little boy sitting there. And so it's the only building in Hartwell that has a live tree in the middle of it. And so he wants everybody to come to his office and look at it. All right. 1906, is that not cute as can be? That's John Walker Herndon outside of his house. There's lots of pictures of people in the archives. I started out with 200 slides, and so I'm sorry. I cut them down a lot. This is Depot Street, looking at some of the areas there. There's the Nancy Hart Hotel. Yeah, that. There's a funny story. W.O. Carter bought this for his wonderful, beautiful wife as an anniversary gift. She thought, what in the heck? And this is what Mary Carter says, her biggest memory of owning the Nancy Hart Hotel. The circus was in town, and all the clowns and all the people would throw their luggage out the window and jump out from the second floor so they wouldn't have to pay. True story. That just cracks me up. That is too funny. The Nancy Hart. There's our Pure Station that would be a great coffee house, Walter, if we can pry it from CVS. All right. These are some different folks in town. Like I said, that's Herndon's, when the soda fountain. There's so many pictures of different things. I just wish I could spend time. Guess where that house was? That house sits where Strickland Funeral Home is. That was a massive house. I didn't take much. There's Judy. Some of y'all made out at the Judy. Jim Wynn had his first date at the Judy, and we gave him a picture of the Judy Theater, and we gave him an armrest, and I said, this is where your beautiful wife rested her arm, and I told him that, and he believes it. There's another picture of the Judy. There were 3 movie theaters here in town at one point. I love that picture. 1910, look at those guys. You know the one on the far left, he was bad. Don't you know that? He was always in trouble. So you just know. Here's some different stores and different eras. Again, all of these from the UGA vault, a lot of these. It's just tremendous. Look, we can get an oven and we can get, now Walter told about his dad who would sell, you could buy it on credit, and he would also wire the house as a part of your plan. You got to get the power there. And so I just think that's awesome. So he'd sell them ovens or refrigerators and sell them and also go and wire the house from the street. It's awesome. That was Hartwell Bank, and then it became, the vault is still in Stephen's office there. It's really neat. And then that little top part, Stephen, it's not used because it's inaccessible. But I keep telling Stephen that he should make that into a prayer closet for the pastor of First Methodist. I would love to sit over the city and pray. Wouldn't that be cool? And then that's a parade. That's where CVS is today. I just wanted to show some of you new folks. There were buildings when I moved here in 2003 all down that street. And CVS and them came to an agreement that they would open it up the way they did. And there was the bus station, Haley's drugstore, the old Haley's building. I've got that picture out there too. There's the Emily. It was on the other side of the square, other side of the street. And the Emily, and they were named after the Yarborough's daughters. They had 3 daughters and 3 movie theaters. And so there was the Emily and the Judy, and what was the other one? The Joy. And it was a drive-in out on 29. It was a drive-in out on 29. Mm-hmm. A lot of joy there. There is, this is a really neat picture, but no comment. Then you've got Vickery's, and then you've got different businesses. We had Western Auto, we had Belt Gallant in the building now that has just been reopened. So there's all different kinds. And so then I took a few, I didn't have much room, and I wanted to show y'all a couple of house pictures. The Searleys just bought this house. So this is now the Adams Matheson Searley house from 1900. Do what? No, that's right. Oh, Carswell, that was there too? Oh, cool. Oh, did you? I didn't know that. Oh, well, we got to change that. And then that's the big house in town. And then we've got, there's somebody in here that's familiar with that house. And then just a little bit, that one's for sale if any of y'all want to buy it. Isn't that right? Yeah, back left corner. If you want a little piece of Hartwell history. And then, all right, we don't have time to go into this, but this is so cool. This is a blind musician that in the 20s was known nationwide. It was blind Simi Dooley, and what was the guy's name? I got to make sure and tell you. I didn't write it down because I thought I'd be able to see it, and I'm blind. Yes, Pink Anderson. Sorry, guy with the camera. We're going to move around. Pink Anderson and blind Simi Dooley. In the 20s and 30s, they cut about 4 or 5 albums. And you need to look them up on YouTube. I can only listen to about 5 minutes of it before I'm ready to hang myself, but it's neat because it's a piece of our history. And Pink Floyd was named after 2 jazz musicians, Pink Anderson, Pink, and then Andrew Floyd, who was also from the area. Isn't that cool? And so I bet y'all didn't know that. And there he is, Pink Anderson and his son taught blind Simi to play the guitar, and Pink would never sing again from being from over in South Carolina. He never would sing again without blind Simi. And so they created all kinds of music in the 20s and the 30s and were well known in many albums on Columbia Records. They went down to Atlanta and did that. All right, this is the last slide because at 15 we're going to be done. I want to tell you this. Willie Carter had a Gulf station. It's right here on the right. This is in front of the Nancy Hart Hotel before the circus got there. This is about 1948. If you remember, if you see, it was two-way street then, of course. And so older residents in our community could not go the wrong way the way they do today. Or trucks, or people from Elbert County. All right. And Willie Carter had a gas station, and a lot of you worked at that gas station when you were teenagers. This is such a good story. And it makes me think of what we're here for. Because Hartwell was kind of in the center, not necessarily in the center, but it was on the main route between what 2 major cities? Atlanta and Washington, D.C. This was the Bankhead Highway. And it came right through Hartwell. And for so many of you that were born and raised here, it was important because so many people from out of town came through this community. And so Willie Carter was a very faithful member of this community, and he considered himself the welcome agent for Hartwell. Now, Willie Carter also, if you remember, some of you do, of course I don't, but he always carried a whisk broom with him. And a part of the thing that he did, always, is he would whisk out the little area between your door and your seat whenever he filled your car up with gas. He had teenagers working there all the time that would wash the windows, check the oil, and do all that kind of stuff. And he considered himself the gateway to Hartwell. And he was just a character within himself. And we remember all those kinds of people, whether you knew Willie Carter or not. Do you know those kinds of people that are welcoming and kind? And it was so important to him. And then he always carried him a whisk broom, always. Well, one day, somebody in this room took the whisk broom, or somebody like somebody in this room, and the kids, they stole it. I mean, jokingly. And so this big lady, and there was a lady in a big old Cadillac, drove in from somewhere in a big city, Atlanta, and pulled in, and he was sitting there, and he pumped the gas, and they cleaned the window, and then he realized that he couldn't find his whisk broom. And that's what he did to every car. Every car. Willie Carter did that. And so he was just distraught. And so the lady looked at Willie, and she said this. She said, "Do you have a restroom?" He thought she said, "Do you have a whisk broom?" And Willie Carter proceeds to say to her, "Just pull it over there and we'll blow it out." That is a true story. Now, a couple of things. I'm giving away 5 whisk brooms, so you can pull it over there and blow it out. Now, this is what I wanted to end with in our little storytelling time. Because we've also, at this point in our history, have lots of new people coming into our community, sometimes passing through. And we need more Willie Carters. We need to be the most kind, the most humble, the most welcoming, the most loving. So when people leave our community, as it says, they may never want to leave. And that's the kind of community, that's the kind of church, that's the kind of people that I believe that God wants us to be. And love people. And if we got to whisk out their car, we can do it. All right, so I'm going to pull some, I've got a couple of things to give away. I always give away stuff because I always empty out drawers in my office. Oh, okay, good. Thank you. He just cheated. He put 3 more of his own in there. Okay. I want to give these away quickly, and then I'm going to give some instructions, and then we're going to go. I've got a couple of things to give away. Let me see. And so when I call out your ticket number, either send somebody up here real quick, or we'll do this as fast as we can. 059, I think they're all 059, 3759. 3759. All right, Pat, you need this. There you go. I'm going to put that right there. 3783. 3783. 3783. All right, Bobby. Whisk brooms. All right. I've stirred these up. 059 3788. There we go, Ken. All right. I did whoosh them around. They're not put in there in order. Okay, I've got whisk broom, 0593723. 3723. All right. Then I've got 0593754. 37. No way. No way. Something ain't right.
Maybe I can figure out a way to get back to this.
If y'all see a grave in town with a whisk broom sticking out of it, you'll know. Okay, I have, when we redid our doors, we had the wood made into little crosses. This wood was 300 years old in 1897, at least. It's probably 400 to 500 years old wood. It was virgin pine when they were created in 1897. So I've got 3 of these to give away. 0593689. 3689. All right. All right. 0593776. 3776. All right. Kraft. All right. One more of the doorwood crosses. 0593677. 3677. All right. Now, I have one cross made of olive wood. Jesus touched this cross. Our Lord, He Himself, sat under the olive tree, and this was the tree that He sat under. 0593661. 3661. All right, Ben Moore. There's a little olive tree. Now, the last one is a Coke bottle made here in Hartwell, Georgia. I think it's from the 50s. I think so. All right. And the Coke bottle goes to 0593787. 0593787. Oh, cool. All right. There you go. That's a real, it's got Hartwell written on the bottom. Okay, thank you, Trace. Let me say this. I know that some of you are disappointed I didn't talk about the murders. That means we'll have to do something in the fall. Because I've got some good murders to tell you about at Brown's Ferry, and there were several people murdered there, and they're no longer with us. And so, but we'll talk about that later. All right, now this is what I want to invite you to do. If you haven't been in our sanctuary in a while, or if you would like, take some time to look at our historical stuff, there's going to be a group that's going to go straight to the museum. Our museum is not very large. There's going to be ice cream over there. There's going to be all the stuff to put on the ice cream. This is casual. We're just going to enjoy fellowshipping together. You can walk. You can take the bus. Lynn is going to drive the bus for anybody that wants to take the bus over there. Let me just say thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you learned something new tonight. I hope that you enjoyed our evening together, and we may do something later to finish it out because I've got 200 more slides. So thank you so much. I love history, and I want y'all to love history too. Yes.
Why was it called
Hartwell? Well, that's just a city name, like Warrenton. Yeah. Hartwellians. There's no evidence there was a well anywhere, so we don't know. All right, so do what? Thomas Hartwell. There was a man named Thomas Hartwell. I didn't know that. All right, good. All right, so our church, you can wander around the church, whatever. If you see something dirty, clean it up. Just enjoy yourself. Lynn, the bus is in the circle. If you'd like to take the bus over to the museum, just make yourself at home. You can look at the stained glass or any of those things.